Hey there, Colin Gilchrist, CEO and founder of Union Kitchen. Today we're going to be talking about how we can leverage social media to drive growth in our CPG companies. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Quick intro, Daniel Diaz. You're the CEO and founder of Social Bulldog. Certainly I can take a stab at what you guys are doing, but you're going to do a lot better. So why don't you tell us, what's Social Bulldog? What do you guys do?
Sure. We are a performance marketing agency. And what that really means is we help our clients, our accounts, our partners drive business growth through paid ads, essentially.
Gotcha. And how long have you been doing that for?
Social Bulldog is coming up to 4 years.
Okay.
No, it's just past 4 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
Very cool. And so you've been in this space for a while as well, or?
Absolutely. So before Social Bulldog, I was at Facebook for just over 8 years.
Okay.
Which was a lifetime, considering that when I joined Facebook, it was very, very small.
Yeah, I guess that puts you back 12 years?
Yes, 12, 13 years or so.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you learned a lot.
Yeah,
cool.
My time at Facebook I spent in data analytics, first in pricing, and then as the platform evolved from insertion orders to an auction-based platform, I moved over from the pricing team into the auction team that we established. And the goal there was to basically learn how to run ads on Facebook, because obviously we didn't know at the time, it was a new auction. And I spent those 8 years teaching people on how to leverage the platform for direct response advertising.
So you were figuring out how to create this ecosystem, this infrastructure for ads and for selling online. Yeah,
essentially. I mean, the auction and platform was created. We had to figure out how to leverage it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what we did. 8 years of that, I started to realize that I was pretty knowledgeable and good at this.
Yeah.
And I started to realize that I really enjoyed the business side of things. My entire family is basically entrepreneurs, and I was the only one at the time that wasn't doing my own thing. So I spent about 6 months in sales and realized that this was the moment to go and do this.
Well, I love that. And I love that we get to talk to you about this because, at Union Kitchen, we're surrounded by entrepreneurship. We're surrounded by people that are seeing a problem and trying to solve it, right? And you did that same thing. And so we get to talk to you about social media and leveraging that to grow your business, and you taking, these experiences you had to help people do that. And so here you are, doing that exact same thing with that same mentality,
right,
and then taking that, packaging it, and trying to deliver it to folks.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to kind of talk about that, particularly through like the lens of consumer packaged food and beverage, which is obviously what we do. But just to kind of get started, so obviously you'll know a little bit about what you guys do. Just for baseline setting, right? When we are working with people, we want people to come in with basic understanding so they can communicate, they can effectively talk about things, and they can not waste each other's time. So when someone's gonna get into social media and then social media marketing, what are the basics? That's kind of what I want to talk about. So let's just starting off, like, what does it mean to market on social media? What does social media marketing mean?
Yeah, it means having a presence on one of these social platforms and leveraging it to promote your product or service, essentially. There's many of them now, obviously, with your Facebooks, your Instagrams, your Pinterests. There's a plethora of them, but they all work essentially the same way. You have your organic and your paid, and what that essentially means is when you create a presence on these platforms, you can post content that would be your organic for free.
Yeah.
And then on all of them, you can also leverage paid advertising. And that dynamic has shifted dramatically over the years where, I'm going to use Facebook as the majority of the example here because I think it's the most powerful for growth, but it's also the oldest in the current space. Back in the day, you could have an organic presence solely on these platforms and actually leverage it to grow. Your organic posts would, if they were good enough, would be boosted to your whole follower base, but then also beyond that, you would get incremental reach beyond that.
And we're saying back in the day. I mean, it's like like a few years ago. How far back do we have to go?
Probably 6 years ago now, or so, maybe 7 years ago. As the auction was still kind of in its infancy, we didn't know so I say we, I still say we at Facebook. I'm no longer there. It's a long time I was there. Facebook didn't really know the value of their impressions as much as they do now. Obviously, it's a much more mature platform. So as that started to evolve, and they realized that paid advertising worked very well.
Yeah.
Obviously, they started to monetize it more. So your organic reach started to shrink.
Yeah.
And it became a pay-to-win, pay-to-play platform, as it should, right? It's driving value for the businesses and the consumers. So nowadays it's pretty much the exact opposite. Your organic reach is not very reliable to drive business growth. It's still important to have. It lets you have a free way to voice who you are as a brand.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I think almost, and correct me, because you know what you're talking about, and I'm just making stuff up. But when I think about social media, or even kind of like your online presence, there's two purposes. One is is a place where you can state who you are, what your brand is, what you stand for, right? Exactly. And you have that opportunity to paint that picture. And then the second is to drive more people to it.
Yep.
And that's where you're going for reach. Yep. And the first is really just like, well, just clearly state who you are, which I think is really interesting. I mean, that's what my mom's doing, right? She's not trying to get her reach, just lots of pictures of the dog.
No, I think that's absolutely the correct way to think about it, in my opinion. Like with the organic posts, you're going to reach a fraction of your followers, let alone all of your followers. And I remember they're going through that transition. Brands were really upset.
Yeah.
But now you have to understand that is the reality of what it is. So I think that's a really great way to look at it. Use your organic way to express who you are as a brand, because it's essentially, it doesn't cost anything to put that post out there. And when you think about paid advertising, those branded messages won't likely work to drive sales. So think about organic as a way to describe who you are, and think about paid as a way to drive new consumers to explore that brand.
To get more eyeballs on that.
Exactly.
I think that's important as we think about the basics, right? So what are the basics? How do you get started? What platforms do you use? But also, what are you doing in that early period?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you were advising someone, and I know you're kind of a little more further along in the process. But if someone's getting started, what do they have to do? Do they have to get a TikTok? Do they have to get a parlor? Like what do they have to do to have their basics to start moving along this journey?
So it's a great question. I think when you're first starting a brand, I think the most important thing is to secure that brand name on some of these platforms.
So right away.
Yes.
Day 1, day 0,
yes.
day -5.
Exactly. When you have a logo and a name that you know you're going to use, try and go and get that name, because oftentimes that will be the first challenge.
Yeah, I still need to get at Cullen Gilchrist. I gotta lock that down.
So I would say start with Facebook and Instagram always.
Okay.
Because ultimately, I believe that when you start running paid media, that's where you're going to start. So make sure you have it there. And then the other social platforms, I think it's a question of time management, right? Do you have the capacity to run these with organic posts or not? There's no harm in going out and getting your brand name on all these platforms.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like you get your Instagram and your Facebook, and those are kind of your workhorses that you start putting content on. But should you just go ahead and sign up on all other platforms just to have a profile?
Yeah, you should. I think it's very important to try and limit how many you try to actively manage.
Yeah.
But it's no harm in getting them all the tags. The smaller social media platforms, remember, they're still very large, but obviously compared to Facebook, they have more of a niche. So there's more of a product market fit for those.
Yeah.
So I would say Facebook and Instagram are a must. Then the other ones, there might be one or two that make sense for your brand, and you have to figure that out over time. So definitely limit the number of platforms you're trying to be active on. Otherwise, it's quality over quantity, for sure.
I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talk a lot too about your website becomes this critical place. Start that and static, and then you're using social media to, from that static place, continue telling your story.
Right.
And then as we were talking about, you grow into maybe the inorganic, reach building, eyeball catching sort of stuff.
Exactly.
Gotcha. So that's kind of your basics. Get that stuff in place. And then you're ready to start building from there.
Yeah, I mean, also, it's one other thing as well. When you open up these accounts on these platforms, it wouldn't hurt to also establish an ad account, which is what you would need to run paid media in the future. There's no harm in doing that now, as well as thinking about potentially installing a pixel on your website.
Yeah, so what's Pixel?
A Pixel is essentially a piece of code that triggers when an event happens, and it's how we measure or how we can even run advertising for a direct-to-consumer brand. It will fire, and when I say fire, it will trigger this code when a user adds an item to a cart or when they purchase, and that will send that information back to said platform.
And this is why I get all those ads of the one thing I put in the cart one time.
Yeah, exactly. And
just pizza ovens everywhere right now. That's all I get.
Yes, that's exactly what's going on there.
Okay.
So and if you're using a platform like Shopify, which I'm assuming the vast majority of brands are nowadays, it's very, very popular. That is a one-button click integration. You get the pixel code ID, I should say, and you drop that into the settings, and that's all you have to do. Shopify has this whole integration built in with Facebook and a few other platforms like Google, that it's a very, very quick one-step process that anyone can really do.
Cool. And I think so much about like, what are our basics, right? Like there's so much to talk about,
right?
But if you don't do the basics, we shouldn't talk about it. So I love that we're starting with this. And so what are the basics? Well, get your website, probably should be Shopify.
Yep.
Get your Facebook, get your Instagram, start putting branded, what your content is, what your story is, put it there. Sign up for other platforms, fill out the profile, but don't worry about managing them unless you really think that's your spot.
Right.
And then do your basics around getting your ad account up, get your pixel, that sort of thing.
And I think that's good to do even if you're not planning to advertise in the next 6 months. It's good to have that
Just
ready.
get it done.
Yeah, exactly. Get it out of the way.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you can put these things on ice and they'll be ready for you. I think a lot of people really struggle with the dichotomy of, there's 30 platforms and I have to do all of them.
Right.
And then they spend all their time on that and they don't build their company or their brand, or they just mismanage all of them. Or they're intimidated by that and so they do nothing.
Right.
And really, if we were going to like write out the playbook here, it'd be like, hey, just get a few posts up. On the ones you're managing, do one a week.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Just get something there so people can see your brand, see you're alive, existing, and they can decide to follow if they want to or not.
Yeah, agreed. That one a week is a great baseline. And I would say, again, manage the number of channels based on that baseline. Do one a week. It can be a short two sentence post with a picture of the packing facilities that you're doing this week, or a new order. Something very simple, just to get your brand across. It also becomes super important when you start running paid media. The social proof and also the existence of a brand will help extremely once you start running paid media.
Yeah, I mean, if your first posts are paid and you have nothing there, it's going to be a little weird, right?
Exactly. It's great. People like to see the brand, to see they identify with it, and also see a nice, healthy history of content.
It's almost trust building.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is this real?
Right.
Are they stealing my credit card info?
That is a very, very valid thing that consumers are worried about on all these platforms. It's like, is this a real thing? Am I going to get scammed? We see comments in our paid ads all the time, even though the brand has years worth of branding in posts.
Yeah, so you got to get those basics done.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, so, get our basics in. We talked about what a few of those are. Everyone should get those things in place before they're thinking about what comes next. If they're going to talk to you, if they're going to go and do their own thing, you got to have your basics in place.
Yeah.
And I love talking about that. That's almost like phase one, get it done, build that. Awesome. Well, I'd like to come back. We'll take a quick break and we'll talk about actually getting in on using paid ads.
Cool.
Cool. Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks.